Hi guys, I'm Danny, and I started a Sunday gym because I've noticed lately that people tend to go to colleges and universities without actually knowing why they're there. And afterwards, starting jobs that are unfulfilling. So I'm interviewing different professionals to see what they have to say and share their knowledge and experience with you. I hope you enjoy it. Hello, Rick. How are you doing today? Thanks for being with me.
Fantastic. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. The program will be focused on three main questions. What do you do for a living? How did you get there? And how did you knew that this was the way to go? So that's what you do for a living, please.
Well, my money comes from corporate America. I'm what they call a product operations manager, which means that I basically lead a business within a chemical group that services the pulp and paper industry for the most part. And I've been doing it my whole life. 30 years I've been here. I got my college degree in paper engineering, and I started with this company out of school. But I did take a hiatus of about 10 years when I went into ministry. It was a professional minister. I have a doctoral and master's and doctoral degrees in ministry. So I did that for 10 years while my wife and I were parenting. We adopted four children at the same time, a sibling group.
Pretty good.
Um, so I was able to, take my degrees in ministry and do something because the corporate America job, there's a lot of traveling. And in the interim, a lot of the work I'm doing in publishing and books and writing and stuff like that are based on my research in ministry. But day in, day out, I'm making money by still working in corporate America.
Which denomination were you?
It's called the Reformed Church, which is kind of Presbyterian for the most part, theologically. But I've got a lot of a theological alignment with Catholicism as well. I guess I'm one of these guys that bridges the divide, so to speak.
Because I myself, I'm an Orthodox Christian, and I know I know about Orthodox Christianity. I know about Catholics, but forgive the ignorance. I don't know much about anything else when it comes to that.
Well, you know what? I think ignorance is sometimes not bad because it
Oh
also
yeah.
prevents us from being prejudiced. I mean, a lot of times false information drives prejudices. And I'm part of the evangelical church, but I've also was an atheist, so I came out of it, and I've got a great appreciation for all the different aspects of religion and faith. So that's not bad.
Yeah. I'm also in the corporate world. I've been dealing with finance and supply chain since 2012. But 2012 was a bit of a bad period here, not a lot of jobs. It was tough. So my career started in the government sector. So from there, I learned never to trust something I hear and only between 25 and 35% of something that I'm seeing in front of me.
Yep.
And this is why one of the many reasons why I don't get angry because now I have such a high tolerance for stupidity that you have to be very special, like government type of special to actually even so that I can even pay attention to that kind of thing. So, it had some good sides too as well. You
You
know how
know, I mentioned to people don't realize the way that anymore finance and supply chain drive the world.
yeah.
And people, I mean, if you're not in that space, if you're not in the business world and realize how important those things are, the decisions are being made based on finance and supply chain. Those are the key attributes of how things function today.
Honestly, my father he used to say, because I wanted to be in finance. I knew what I was going to do when I was 15 years old. I knew exactly what to do and how to get there. But my father said, finance is a good thing, management that's pretty good. That's interesting, it's dynamic. But either learn a technical skills or go to supply chain. But you can put finance into supply chain as well, and you can put technical in there too. But if you have a solid job in supply chain, you're pretty much set for life. Because it's an odd sector, and it's a sector you cannot escape from. Everybody relies on that.
You can't escape from it. But I remember too because my bachelor's is in a technical degree. I have an engineering, so my main job started out being technical based. But when you go through your degree like that, and you think you're going to come out and be like a problem solver, you're going to fix things, but what we don't realize is that everything has to have an ROI.
What is
Everything has
our,
return on investment.
yeah,
Everything has to have a financial reason for why you're doing what you're doing. And when you're done doing it, you have to prove why it was of value. And it's all based on finance and accounting, right? Every
yeah.
decision is going to boil down to what difference did it make to our money, and we forget that. We come out of school thinking, I'm just going to fix problems,
No.
You're not here to fix problems. You're here to make money. And sometimes fixing problems is necessary to make money, but you're here to make money. So
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. They do say that money is the root of all evil. I disagree with that 100%. Money has nothing to do with it. There was this quote, I'll remember later where I heard it, but in a world without gold, we may have been heroes, right? And some, crook says it to another crook. Like, no, problem's not the gold. There's a lot of gold and a lot of people. Not all of them are, running around stabbing people and robbing them. So it doesn't work that way. So no, money is nothing but a tool. It's good to have them. I personally, I've always tried to be doing well. I always advise people to have at least two jobs. For, one of the reasons you're gonna get additional money, and the other reason you won't have much time to spend anyways. So that's why I've always had two jobs, not because I'm a worker. I'm actually in my core, in my essence, I'm a very lazy man. Always have and I always will be, I guess. My father was so ashamed of me, but it is what it. But I've always kept the two jobs just in case.
I don't think money is the root of all evil. I think the root of our evil stems from our how we psychologically approach things, and
Yeah,
we can turn any good into evil, and we can turn any evil into good depending on how we're psychologically approaching those things.
absolutely. That kind of wisdom. That's the reason I want to have you here. My second question is, I guess I'll have to split it in two, because you went to corporate and
Yeah.
then you decided to go with the church. So the second question is, how did you knew that, how'd you get there? So were you like walking on the street one day and you decided to go to engineering and corporate America? And about the church, did you felt like a calling? Were you encouraged by some? You said you were married at the time. Were you encouraged by your wife or friends? Tell me about both of those paths.
Well, the getting into my bachelor's degree in engineering was because I was a tightwad, which may be an American term. I don't know, but basically a cheapskate, right? I didn't want to spend money. And what I found
Yeah.
out was that I could get this particular degree and I could earn two scholarships at the same time. So I actually got my bachelor's degree and made money while I did it. I had no idea what the paper industry was. I didn't know where I was going. All I knew was I didn't want to pay for it. And
Yeah.
so that's how I ended up there. Whether it's good or bad, I don't know, but it's been a good living. The ministry actually was a different kind of story because while I was in college and early after graduating, I was what I describe as an evangelical, born again atheist. Okay. And so, what I began to do is I began to wonder, is there, because an atheist, there is no God, right? And I began to wonder, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm, well, because that could be a problem.
You really have to be at that level of maturity to swallow the ego to ask that question. Do you have
Well,
any
yeah,
idea how many people will never ask that question? What if I'm wrong? It won't even cross their mind.
no, and
It's a lot
it's
of
such an important question.
self-reflection.
No, it's such an important question of every asset. I remember one time, anyway, but I get it, and so I even said this to myself. I said, Rick, you just spent 5 years learning how to make paper. All right. And you decided there was no God in like 15 minutes. You know, shouldn't you spend at least as much time deciding if there's a God or not? And you know what? If you spend 5 years studying it and you still decide there's no God, well, fair enough. You put the energy into it. And so I actually went and got my first degree in ministry, not because I wanted to be a pastor, but because I wanted to know, I wanted to understand, I wanted to learn, I wanted to, and so the more I got into it, the more invested I became, and the more truth I actually found there, and the more
Yeah.
truth I found, the more I dug. And what happened was I didn't actually become a pastor. Even I was there to learn. Is what I was in. But then corporate America, when after I graduated with my advanced degrees, they came to me and we were having a reduction in force, right, which happens. And they told me, they said, Rick, the good news is you still got a job. The bad news is now you got two jobs, yours and the guy we let go. And my wife and I had just adopted our kids, 4 kids. And I just realized that I couldn't do it. I couldn't travel that much. I couldn't work that much and raise our 4 kids. And at the time, the church was willing to pay me to come launch a new church for them. And I could stay home. I could do it from home. I could, raise my kids. And so that's how I ended up in ministry, was mostly driven by the need, the desire I had to be home for my kids. And it worked out great.
I can tell. I had a guest friend of my program, and he said something very interesting. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. Like, because yeah, if you really think about it, then you have to pretty much be responsible for everything, and we're not. There's good, which is of God. There's evil, which is of Satan, and you are either with one or with the other. There's no in between. I know it sounds harsh. No, my point is not to be harsh. I'm not trying to insult people. It's not like I don't have anything better to do, but it's how it is. And once you accept that there is this higher power, I personally call it God. I don't know why people decide to change the name, but it's not changed in my vocabulary. You walk earth, as a feather, light as a feather, because you're able to surrender the ego. And it's a pretty wise thing of, what you did to go to university, because it was gonna be cheaper for you. Because I've interviewed some people from the States, and I know you guys have that, bit of an issue with money and like, for example, I went to a private college. I graduated, my bachelor was private college. I was a bartender there, and 1 month's salary was 60% or 70% of the entire semester. And
Wow.
and this was a private college. I was regular bartender. Then I went to Denmark for my master's degree, and it was free because I'm a citizen of the EU. Uh, Last year or the year before, I don't remember, but I decided to go with a PhD. I didn't start because I had some personal problems and issues. But if I was going to, 1 year of PhD here would have cost me like, I think was 150 or 160 euros, which is approximately $180 for 1 year PhD. So we don't have that, but I know that you have to be very smart in the United States when you decide to pursue higher education, because if it doesn't work, and that's of course, from what I'm hearing, if it doesn't work, they don't give you your money back.
No, there's no money back, and it's expensive. And I went a long time ago when a person could still somewhat afford it, but it's even worse today. So, if you get into a full university type degree, it's incredibly expensive. And what's unfortunate is then you also better know darn well what you're going to do and why you're there and how to execute it quickly. You can't go there just to learn. You have to go there in order to get in and get out. And that's unfortunate too.
Here in Europe, things are a bit different. Not all, but solid amount of the universities. have what we call, fake professors. They're not real professors. Those are professionals that work in that field. And actually, they're over there because they need, new workers, new people for the company. For example, things are very segregated here. If you were to be an engineer here, you would have go to a technical high school, and for 5 years there, you would have been tutored by the people who were tutoring at the university. They also work in companies. So by the time you graduate your bachelor, you would be with those people for about 9 years. You would have worked for them as an internship, and basically you would go from there. And the lectures and the classes are made like that, so you pretty much don't have time for anybody else. If you're going to be a chemist, it will be the same type of program, and that's on purpose. So that, by the time you're out, pretty much all of your friends are like that. Yeah, you can make new friends at the age of 25, 26, but those are the people you grew up with. And it works.
I saw, yeah, I saw that. We got close friends in the Netherlands, and it's almost like you're channeled from a fairly young age into
Yeah.
what direction you want to head. And because of that channeling, right or wrong, it's very, very focused, and you're headed again in a direction, and that's the direction you're going. And so, yep, good or bad, it's definitely focused.
True. Although in today's world you have so many options. Like again, I knew that I would be in finance, but I decided to try technical stuff, Cisco architecture. Man, I was so miserable. It wasn't even funny. I think either here or elsewhere, I told that story. I was in a pub with a friend of mine. He said, we should go to see Tony. Tony is a bartender from another pub. I said, why would I go there? Tony hates me. I hate him. I don't like him. Why would I go there? I said, well, yeah, but you look so miserable. He gonna love it. Ah! So yeah, no, he was right. Those were 4 horrible months, but I don't regret it. At least I tried.
You did try. Fantastic.
My third question is, how did you knew that this was the way to go? You kind of already covered it, but the reason I'm asking is because it is exactly was what I just said. People tend to go to colleges and universities. Most, not all, but most have that mentality that you go over there, you get a piece of paper, and your life is perfect now, which is not the case. And just because you have a diploma doesn't mean you will have a good job or any job at all. It depends, of course, but you know what I'm talking about. And my point is that they get into stuff that's definitely not for them, which is again not an insult. Then you go into a field that's not for you, you end up being miserable, and you can't always fake being miserable. At some point, this will come out. And that's why I'm collecting those amazing examples, you being one of them, of course. Uh, again, the reason I'm asking is because you already had a pretty solid background. Okay, I understand. Adopted children, you had to take care of them, but you already had the corporate background. You had options for ministry and so on and so forth. But with all that thing behind you, you could have went any other direction. I'm sure you had tremendous options, but you decided to go with that one. What was the reason for that?
I don't think you're going to like my reason. Um,
I'm
it
not here
was
to like
that is a great statement. That is so. Thank
I'm,
you for that.
I'm here to interview.
Well done. That took me. That's very surprising. I'm going to have to remember that in the future. But I think what kept me in places was fear. I think that I was afraid of poverty. I was afraid of the cost of university. I was afraid of change. I was afraid of making mistakes. I was afraid of venturing out, which seems kind of crazy. It doesn't seem like I'm afraid of venturing out because I've done a lot of crazy stuff.
No, it's a
But I think
different kind of fear. This is a
yeah,
practical kind of fear.
practical. Thank you. It's a practical kind of fear. But I think if we're not careful, and I
Yeah.
experience this all the that fear is probably the main thing that prohibits us from really experiencing life and experiencing the things that we really are probably called to do, for lack of a better thing, way of saying it. So I think the things that have kept me going are the fact that I've made mistakes and I've tried to make the best of the mistakes that I've made. I think for me, going into ministry was probably a mistake. But what I was able to do is learn from that. And I've been able to write and I've been able to author books. And I think corporate America is probably not the best spot for me. But what we have to do is we have to keep evolving. We have to learn and we have to keep moving in a direction that just feels healthier for us, instead of getting stuck. And I think that's the challenge because we will make mistakes.
I absolutely agree with you. Everybody makes mistakes. And that practical fear is pretty much a defense mechanism. Like, you know, millions of years ago, there were two cavemen walking around and they heard a noise in the bushes, and one of them said, "Okay, it's probably a tiger." The other one said, "No, let's check it out." Now, the one that said that's probably a tiger and we should stay away from it is actually our ancestor because the other one got eaten. So it's good to have that fear. I don't think necessarily that out of fear we're missing life, because life's gonna happen anyway. So, you can travel, you can do that, this and that, but if you don't have this, this internal break, like just don't do it, don't jump, the world would have been a way nastier place. So it's a good thing to have that. And that practical fear is, I think it's very, very important, especially for men, to have that. Because, you're the foundation of your household. You're the rock. As a nice carpenter once said, you're the rock upon the church is built. So it's pretty much like that. And fear it's a good thing to have fear. It's a bad thing to allow fear to, lead your life.
Make your
But
decisions for you. Yes.
yeah,
Yep.
like as I said, I fell in love with Denmark. I love Denmark. But this is why I am highly against free healthcare, because some of those skinny little people really have no fear when they should, and I'm pretty sure that wouldn't be the case if the healthcare wasn't free.
And when I think about all those things, and it's funny because my wife, for example, is a principal. I don't know what your language is there for at an elementary school. She's an administrator of an elementary school. And when I look at her, I see somebody who's truly feels called. That's what she was always meant to do. And I've kind of always been jealous of that. But jealousy of that doesn't help either. You have to find a way. Here I am. Okay, so she has this thing. And yeah, it looks really cool. And it is cool. Good for her. Good on her. And I hope there's more people like her. But in the meantime, the rest of us are here. And so what do we do while we're here to understand what we're contributing to the world in the place we are right now?
Absolutely. Now, Rick, I have a fourth question. I never put it in the description and the invitation because I love the reaction. Although if you've seen one episode, you've pretty much seen them all about that. But so far, I've never actually had the same, answer. So if you can give my audience one advice, my audience is mostly of people that are sitting here. Is this job for me? Is this university for me? Have I chosen the correct way? If you can give those people one advice, what will it be?
I think you've already given it to them. And that is the advice is fear not. And, or better, the way you said it was even better. Don't let your fear make your decisions for you. And there is a reason that the most common command in the Bible is fear not. 365 times the command is fear not, because 9 times out of 10, if we make a decision because of fear, it's going to be a bad choice. And
Yeah,
so my advice to everybody, to your exact point, fear itself, not bad. Letting fear make our decisions for us is not going to end well. That's my advice.
that's pretty good. It's a golden advice, man. It's this is why I love talking to people like you, because that kind of an advice, if you really think about it, it's applicable for pretty much every situation. Like every.
Everything.
That's why
You're
it's so
absolutely
important. And with that said, Rick, thanks for being with me. Please send me the links for the books, social media, everything, so that people can check it out. And that's about it.
will do. I appreciate being here too. Thank you.
Likewise. Guys, I hope this one was useful. Please follow the channel on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, Gap, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Ring the bell and all the good stuff. Have a nice week ahead, and I'll see you next Sunday.